Jakob Ingebrigtsen is going to do in the 1500. He has time to look behind him. 20 years of age, and he is on top of the world.
But coming down for a maiden national crown, Cornwall is the champion.
Algarouz has run his race, or has he? Has he got anything left? Algarouz trying to get there. Kipchoge, the junior's there. Algarouz is trying to get to the line. Kenya wins it. Kipchoge takes
Vivian Chariot's turn. And what a proud moment for her and the Kenyans. The first woman from her nation to take the 5,000 metre title. Vivian Chariot's in Dreamland.
on the outside. Ollie Hall of Australia comes. Jake Whiteman has just spent. It's going to be Chariot and Hall. Who's going to get it? It's going to be Australia. The gold.
Kiwi middle distance runner Samuel Tanner is well known to those who dig their 1500 metre running. A 3:31 1500 metre guy where he finished 6th at the 2002 Commonwealth Games. Tanner is a previous collegiate 1500 metre record holder over 1500 metres. Fresh off a semi-final appearance at the Budapest World Champs 1500 metres, we sat down with Tanner for a deep dive into his training, college days, thoughts on Jakob Ingebrigtsen and more. This episode is brought to you by Spikes.au. Explore Spikes.au for Australia's largest range of replacement spikes and enjoy fast and free delivery this track season. Check out the show notes for the link. This episode is also brought to you by Fractel. Fractel Headwear was born in Australia and is proudly trusted by over 50,000 happy customers. Their focus is premium performance headwear, designed for a community that loves to get outside and run. Lastly, if you enjoy this episode, it would mean a lot if you press subscribe and take the time to leave a 5-star review. This way, we can keep punching out yarns like this for many years to come. Samuel, it's awesome to have you on Runners Tribe. I think we did a written interview maybe once with you, but it's awesome to have you here. And I've been wanting to catch up since you started dropping such fast 1500s.
Well, thanks for having me, mate. It's always a pleasure to be on your little prestigious podcast. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Nice, man. You're back home, I presume. You had a huge season from the sounds of it. You went to obviously a long time in Europe and it culminated in Worlds, and I think you raced in Zurich just after that. But you're back home right now, I presume.
Yep, yeah, back home in Papamoa, mighty Bay of Plenty. Geordie Beamish always says that the bay, that my bay is the second best bay because he's in the Hawke's Bay and I'm in the Bay of Plenty, and I don't agree. He's wrong in that sense. That's why he left, and I'm still here.
And for those Aussies and Americans and Europeans and blah blah that have no idea where that is that North Island, South Island, or whatnot?
Yeah, North Island. We're both on the east coast, but the Bay of Plenty is slightly more north. It's about 2 hours southeast of Auckland. I feel like most people would recognize maybe where Auckland is as a reference point, but yeah, it's nice. Yeah, in America, it'd take you probably 40 minutes to drive from Auckland to Papamoa, but we don't have straight roads.
And I take it you love home, hey? Like you're the sort of guy that just loves getting home and after a long season hanging out at home.
Yeah, mate. I really recharge at home, eh? Like I think after 4 months away, my wife said to me the other day, she's like, "You really are a homebody, eh?" I'm like, "Yes, I miss kite surfing." So I went kiting last night with my dad. I'm like, I was planning on doing like 25 minutes because I'd already run and gymmed, and so I was like, "Oh, I'm pretty tired." Did 25 minutes. I was like, "Nah, stuff this. I'm having way too much fun." So I went like we kited, ended up doing like 15K on the water, which was so much fun. But ended up being just like an hour of kite surfing, which is just epic.
Nice. Is that pretty? Is that like kind of pretty good for your upper body? Like, is it? It doesn't. I've never done it, but it doesn't look very easy. Like, I'm pretty sure I would drown.
No, well, it's kind of like my dad describes it as having like a jet ski attached to you at all times, and so it's like you can use the horsepower when you want to. But yeah, by the end of the session, I haven't been in the gym in a while, so I did like some pull-ups and stuff in the gym yesterday, just kind of to get back into the swing of things. And by the time I finished kiting my arms, I could barely hold the bar. I was just like, "Oh, I'm actually far cooked now. There's no way I could do another hour of kiting." But yeah, no, it's a pretty cool sport. And surprisingly, your heart rate's quite high. And so I've done a couple of sessions earlier on in the year before I left, and and my heart rate was like averaging 150, 155 for 2 hours of kiting. And so you're like, it's actually an aerobic sport really, which is kind of exciting. But then you get the kind of range of movement stuff as well, which is adds to the benefit, I think.
Sounds like a pretty good way to cost train, hey?
Yeah. I think it's the new elliptical or new Alter G. Because instead of the Alter G taking the weight off you, you just like pulling up from the waist.
Next thing we'll see Ingebrigtsen out kite surfing.
Yeah, I know. Actually, fun fact, Ingebrigtsen is already copying me on one thing because I rode motorbikes and stuff. And then I talked to him after the Diamond League final. He's like, "Oh, I just bought a new motorbike." I was like, "What did you buy? Like a Honda 250 or something dumb?" And he's like, "Nah, BMW S1000 RR." And I'm like, "Holy crap, mate! That's like a proper bike. It's like a 200 plus horsepower motorbike." I'm like, "Freaking this guy's crazy." But yeah, so I was like, "Oh, there we go. He's copying one."
Earning those sweet Nike dollars, I guess. I take it.
Yeah, I'm buying the second-hand bike. So.
Oh, classic. But on Ingebrigtsen, quick, what's it like hanging out with him in Europe and on the tour? Like, is he a cool guy, or is he sort of, does everyone put him on a pedestal and treat him differently, or do you treat him the same as like you'll treat kind of an Aussie that you meet, you know?
It can't be the same as an Aussie. I feel like Kiwis and Aussies have a special click. Me and Stewie hung out for a day after the Brussels 2K, and we're just cracking up and chatting shit all day long, which is good fun. But yeah, he's an interesting character. I really get along with. I think I get along with him well. Maybe he doesn't like me. I don't really care. But he's a cool dude, and I think the more you get to know him, the more layers you like open up. And so people a lot of the time in the media and stuff give him a hard time for being such a robot. I'm like, mate, he's a robot because he's so invested in his sport, but flipping heck, he's actually like, the more you chat to him, I'm like, the cooler he gets. I'm like, this is kind of cool. I didn't realize this side of him was there. So I when I found out he rode motorbikes, I was like, there's a whole nother level of respect that went into that. I was like, fire out, man, that's cool.
Oh shit. Hey, quickly just to the world champs. I remember we chatted with Nick Willis like years and years ago about his career, and he was saying that the semi-finals of a major champs, the 1500 semi-finals, was like one of the hardest places you can find yourself, you know, because it's just so many hungry athletes who are just desperate to get in that final. They're all like so good, and you found yourself in a world champs semi-final in Budapest. Obviously, you got run out of that semis, but you know, how was that experience? Do you agree with what Nick was saying back, those years ago?
Oh yeah, he every now and then I get a message from him, or before a race or after a race, and he gives me some sort of advice or encouragement, and I'm just like, far out. The more I think about his career, the more I respect him, and you're just like, that is so impressive, to just achieve half of what he achieved, and the longevity and stuff. I was just, it blows my mind. But yeah, it's a pretty difficult position to be in, semi-final, especially this year. Like, I haven't been a student of the sport for too long, so I would have liked to know what it has been like in previous years. But I'm sure this is one of the fastest years in history, and it was just so hard to make that final. Everyone in the final deserved to be there because they were all exceptionally fast, and they all potentially could have run under 3:30 if the race went that way that day. Because I know I was in sub 3:30 shape or 3:30 flat shape if the race presented itself in that way. And so yeah, I'm just still a little grommet, and so I'm learning to not make stupid mistakes like I did in the semi. But yeah, like we had a bit of a debrief with the coach the other day, and went, okay, we identified what's wrong and where we went wrong, and hopefully we can learn from that and not make the mistake in Paris. But yeah, Budapest was good fun. Definitely probably the most pissed off I've ever been, because I knew that physically I was in good shape to at least make the final, and that was one of my big goals for the season. So a little disappointed to do that, but at the same time, you can't be disappointed when you're ranked top 15, top 10 in the world, and then also competing against some of those guys week in, week out throughout the season.
Yeah, and I guess the Olympics is like literally just around the corner. Hey, I mean, that must be just such motivation for you to just get back to it at home and put in a big base and get ready.
I definitely needed a couple of weeks after the season to just like reset emotionally, spiritually, physically. I was pretty stuffed. But the wife came over to Hawaii and we went surfing for like 4 days and then we did some hikes and stuff. And so now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm actually pretty ready to hit this like Olympic campaign pretty hard. So no, I'm excited, and I think, you know, I've just kind of been like so analytical of every single one of my races. I'm like, how do I keep ballsing this up? And so I'm just hoping that like next year I apply all the knowledge actually, as well as the physical component.
Yeah, it depends how you define ballsing it up. Hey, like I'm pretty sure the majority of people who try and make it, you know, become elite 1500 runners would love to be in your shoes. So,
Yeah.
um, the in terms of like just the kind of, we've already touched on the depth of global 1500 meter running, but you know, what's it like? What's it like just being around like the Stu and Ollie and obviously Jake Whiteman and Josh Kerr and the Ingebrigtsens, and I've just named a few, but it just feels like there's, you know, no longer is it dominated by Kenyans, Moroccans, Ethiopians, and there's just is there a belief now, you know, that you can, if Ingebrigtsen's done it and Josh and Jake's done it, that then anyone can do it?
Yeah, it's such a difficult one, because I think, yeah, definitely it's been a belief and mindset change for, I think, a lot of the Europeans and us, like little runts down on this side of the world. But yeah, I think the training, the shoes, everything is just accumulated and gone, actually, no, we can compete with these guys. And I think it's, you know, a couple of key people who are just willing to send it a little bit. And you know, Ingebrigtsen's a big factor in that, and so he's changing the sport in a good way. And you know, so he's really good for the sport. And guys like Ollie, you know, they're just guys who are willing to charge. And I think that was like the same as like back in John Walker's day. Like there was guys who just ready to hammer. And so there's probably that little medium era where people just like were all like, oh, I got the best kick. I can tactically run really well. And yeah, that's so cool. But you know, I think that's probably one of the reasons why the Kenyans were so good then, is because guys were training to be tacticians, and the Kenyans were never tacticians, you know, or the East Africans are never tacticians. They just want to run hard like people do now. And so I think that's probably changed the way Europeans and us guys have started training, to just, yeah, so we can run 329, 330 week after week, which is, yeah, it's exciting, eh? Like it means that I'm, you know, chasing guys like Nick Willis's New Zealand record every race throughout the season, or Walker's mile, like in every mile I run. And so it also, you know, like in some way makes it a little easier to get, because it's just like there's multiple opportunities in a year, not just like Monaco 1500, you know.
It's all right, man. And it's like, even from a fan's perspective, like I love middle distance running more than probably the average person, but it's been years since I've got up at 2 a.m, you know, to watch a race, because I just like, I don't want to wait till 7 a.m, 8 a.m. And like the way that Stu, you know, when he's at his best, right? Like the way he attacks those races, it's just like, it's just freaking awesome watching him attacking. And then Ollie, he's just so aggressive, and just seeing those guys just balls up and just like attack from the front and not sit it in last or anything. They just like put it on the line, not scared to blow up. It's really spectacular to watch. Hey.
Yeah, and it's cool to be a part of too, because, you know, like I've kind of just, you know, like I'm in the top group now, but I've only kind of just got there to be one of those guys in that level. And so I feel like this year I've still been kind of a grommet in that sense. And it's kind of been cool to just like watch those guys, you know, do their thing. And so for me, like if I race a gold level race, that's me. Like I'm that guy, I'm them and the gold levels and the silvers and stuff. But when it goes to the diamond leagues, I'm just like, actually, this is cool to be a part of, and to see it happening in front of me whilst I'm in the race. And yeah, everybody's hungry to run fast, which is so exciting. And you know, people like pushing their bodies and pushing their own limits, and seeing what they're capable of, and that just sets it up really well to do so. So it's, yeah, I love it, and it's made 1500 meters really exciting for me to be a part of, and hopefully the fans enjoy it, eh?
Yeah, I reckon they do. I think also the fans, like a lot of Aussies were pretty stoked for you, I reckon, with the medal at Comm Games. And you obviously look pretty stoked too, hey? Like you crossed that line with a huge smile and had a bit of a celebration. Is that the highlight of your career, do you think, so far?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Especially because I think I was probably like in my head, I was like, oh, I'm probably like in 332 high shape or 333 low. And then to run like 331.3, I was like, what just happened? I just ran faster than John Walker, like Sir John Walker. And, so there's almost like that level of prestige that I just like, did I really just do that? Like, and, people are like, oh, a lot of athletes get disappointed with sixth. And I'm like, mate, six is freaking mean. You're at the Comm Games and you run a 1500 and it's the most competitive 1500 ever. And, like your mate from across the ditch just won the freaking thing. Like, be stoked for him, be stoked for yourself. And so it was pretty cool, especially that Ollie won it. I was just like, yeah, he deserves to win it. Like, that guy works so hard. And,
I hope he can
cranks.
get back from this, athletic, his pubic injury that he's suffering at the moment.
Yeah.
You just brought up Sir John Walker. I think you met him like 6 months ago, and obviously I think his mile record, man, if I stuff this up, I think it's like 3:49.08, and you've run like 3:49.51. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're pretty close, but there aren't that, like, you're not in America anymore. There aren't that many mile races. Like, I guess you can try and get in Dream Mile or whatever. But what I'm saying, my point is, there's only like 1 or 2 cracks a year. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be it's a hard flipping time to run. And I feel like sometimes I think about it and I'm like, man, he ran that in what, 1970 something or 80, early 80s, and like leather shoes, probably on a really old rubber track or something, like, or probably it's brand new rubber track, but old,
75. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. 75. Holy shit. That's
75.
Yeah.
75 is a friggin' old record, man. And so I'm like, that it just shows the level of greatness that he was and is, I guess. But like, yeah, I met him a couple months ago and I kind of chatted to him and he told me some stories about back in the heyday and and he had some laughs. And he's a cool dude, and I think it would be a real honor for me to break his record while he's still alive. And so hopefully next couple of years I can get close to that and put a smile on his face when he sees that Sam Tanner that he met a couple of years ago has cracked his record finally.
You had to leave your hair out that day, man. Have long flowing hair like Walker and just dip under.
Oh man. Okay, tell me if you agree. I watched Geordie run the semi-final at Worlds with the steeple, and I was like, I'm looking at Walker right now.
Yeah,
he had his friggin' hair out, and I was like, I'm looking at John Walker run. I'm like, oh man, Geordie, please don't do the mile. I'm like,
I saw a few people online saying the same thing. It's pretty funny, but he does. Hey, it's like,
oh yeah. Like same, like almost the same running style too, just like so tall and beautiful runner.
Hey, I want to just quickly flick to you spent a little bit of time at college in Washington, I think it was, and wanted to just quickly touch on that because I don't think you were there for the full eligibility period of 4 years or whatever. But how did that go, man? How was the experience? Why did you decide to kind of call it quits and turn pro early?
It was, yeah. I'll start at the beginning. It was a funny journey for me because I kind of got into running pretty late. So like properly into running quite late. And so I was kind of like 17 when I started training. And I won national cross pretty quick. And a bunch of like colleges reached out or college coaches reached out on Facebook Messenger. And I thought they were like scammers. I'm like, what are these what are these old guys messaging me, asking me to come to America and like offering me like scholarships? I'm like, no, I'm not. What are you, crazy? And so I didn't know this was a thing. And then I asked my coach and a couple of the mates, like Nick Mulai and Isaiah and stuff, and Theo Quacks. And I was like, is this a thing? Like, yeah, I mean. And so I talked to them about it, started learning about the NCAA, got excited, went over, chose Washington, which was like super exciting. So pretty much Andy reached out to me after he moved from Oregon to Washington, and offered me a scholarship. I came and visited, loved it, and learned a bit about his reputation and was pretty excited to be a part of that program. Loved the 2 years there. I got super fat the first year. I put on the freshman 20. So it was like, I got from like 60 to 70 kilos. And like at the time I was probably like 59 kilos back then. And then I went to 69 kilos. And so I came 232nd at National Cross, and I was like, to be honest, struggling with food a little bit. I was like, oh man, I can't like eat as much as I usually eat. Because in New Zealand, I eat heaps, but I also, will go for 2 runs and a kite surf. And so just like, I just burn through calories like it's nothing. And so I kind of, it was like, not like it was a little bit of a mental battle for me while I was over there, for the 2 years. But essentially, I did some cool things. I broke a collegiate record indoors, and then I went to the Olympics. Yeah, 334. Which was also Willis's indoor record, which is kind of exciting. But then went to the Olympics, and my coach knew an agent, and so he just reached out for me to some companies and saw if there was anything available, because I had such a good bond with my coach from high school, Craig Kirkwood, and he's just, we click really well, and there's good banter. Like it's good Kiwi Aussie style banter, like you could turn up to training, he'll chat some talk, and you're just like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, coach. Like, and then he's ready to throw you under the bus at any point, and
Nice.
in a good way. And so we just have a really good relationship, and still to this day is the same. But I loved Andy as a coach, and I love the team, but essentially I had 3 more years of study. There's kind of a couple of reasons why I ended up leaving. 3 more years of study or in the US, or 2 years in New Zealand plus 1 more. Oh no, sorry, 2 more years in the US, and then 1 in New Zealand to get like registered for whatever degree I got, or 3 years in New Zealand for a full degree. And so I was like, I'm just going to come back to New Zealand. I'm lucky enough to have a Prime Minister scholarship now, and so I can study part-time, which suits me really well, living pro-life in Europe and et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of the first reason. The second reason, I was really keen to get married. I had the most beautiful girl back home, and I thought that 2 years overseas, I'd be like, oh, it's either going to make or break the relationship. And I was like, oh nah. I left, and I'm like, this chick's so cool. And so I knew I wanted to marry her, so I came back and got married. And the third reason, I was like, it would be kind of nice to capitalize on good form and making some money. And so I did that, and yeah.
Oh, good on you, man. Like, that's a pretty awesome answer, pretty transparent of you. So when did you get married?
January 22, after the Olympics.
Nice.
Yeah, which was super cool. And we had a little venue up on the Coromandel too, which is like a little surf town where my dad grew up, or surf peninsula where my dad grew up. So it was amazing.
Awesome. Hey, so like, just quickly, prior to the age of 17, you hadn't really run much, but you must have built an aerobic engine somehow. What were you doing your whole childhood?
I didn't really train too much. I did cross country like every year, but it was just kind of like, I'd go for I thought it was like a 6K on the block, but it was actually only 4Ks. So I was actually under training even then. And I was like, but I'd pretty much go out and just like fartlek for trainings like twice a week. And then I just play like touch rugby. I surfed heaps and heaps. Like in high school, I surfed before school and then played touch after school or something. And so there's all like these aerobic base like benefits that are coming from like 1,000 different places. Yeah. And then I was strong from, I had strong legs from snowboarding and skating and things. And so I built up I was pretty robust by the time I started training. And so Craig didn't give me much, but he just gave me enough to tune me. So I started when I was 17, I was probably only running 30, 40 Ks a week. When I was 18, I ran probably up to 50 Ks a week, and 19 was like 60 to 70 or maybe 80 in the winter. But it's been a pretty quick progression to where I'm at now. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting journey, not one that most kids get to do.
Sounds like a pretty good childhood though,
Yeah, for sure.
Your coach, Craig Kirkwood, I just want to jump into him a little bit, because it sounds like an interesting guy, and he's obviously Obviously, you're a huge fan. What's his background, man? Has he coached a bunch of runners before? What kind of training philosophy does he believe in? All that sort of stuff.
CK is a cool coach, man, because he's pretty chill, and he kind of looks at coaching / training as like an art. And so it's not too much of a science. He doesn't be like, oh, we've got to do double threshold because we need you to be this and this and this fit and da. But he just goes, all right, you need to be doing this and you need to work hard today. Take this day a little easier. And so he's pretty involved in the whole process of like how I'm feeling, which makes you feel pretty valued as an athlete too. So mentally you're quite switched on and in tune with your body. And so I think in the season it pays off as well because you're constantly listening to your body and what it's telling you. But in terms of background, Craig, he got a university scholarship, a running scholarship to University of Oklahoma. No, Oklahoma. Anyway, it wasn't OAC, it was the other one. And so he did 4 years there and then went and maybe spend another year there or two. Enjoyed his time, but I think he had a pretty average coach there at the time. And so he's learnt a lot through like what doesn't work, so he's like, okay, this is too much, this isn't then anyway we went on to be a marathoner, half marathoner, ran a pretty fast 10 half and full. I think he ran 2:12 or 2:13 in the marathon back then, so that was in like 2000, so it was pretty quick. But he, I think, qualified for Comm Games for the marathon, and then kind of got into a coaching / assistant role with Kim McDonald, who was a big dog in the agent kind of sphere in the early 2000s. And that's how we met my now agent, Tom Ratcliffe. And so he was pretty well connected. And I didn't know this when I first started getting coached by him, but he'd essentially been around guys like Mo Farah, around guys like Noah Nying and all those guys who were like exceptional Kenyans, and he'd seen their workouts, he'd seen what they'd done, he'd seen what worked and what didn't. And so I think all of those factors just accumulatively have turned him into like a really well-rounded coach without even being like a professional. Like, I mean, he's actually done some qualifications and stuff on it too, but yeah, it's just funny because he's like a little coach in New Zealand that doesn't have a massive elite group, but he creates really elite athletes. Like he's got Hayden Wild, who's a triathlete, and Hayden's I think he's second in the world this year for the World Triathlon Series, but essentially he's number one in the world. Like he's just exceptionally good. He came third in Tokyo for the Olympic distance triathlon, and he's just an animal. And so Craig just knows how to coach people to be animals. And so that's what I want to be, like I want to turn up to the start line and go, oh, here comes Sam, he's an animal. Like, and just, I'm getting there, but I'm just like trying to be like steady at the same time and not blowing myself up, or dig myself into a training hole. But we just get along really well. It's a good little trio. And he's accumulated a couple of other athletes like Julian Oakley's training with us now, and he's a real valuable member to have when we're training. And it's a pretty cool approach to training.
And I was reading last year you were hitting about 100K weeks. What do you kind of during this kind of build up period now? I presume you're in a base build up period now, right? But what sort of mileage are you hitting at the moment?
Well, I just started, so was probably a little low at the moment. I did like 60K last week. But it'll probably be like 80K this week, and then maybe 90 the following week. I don't know. Progressive. Craig will get me soon up to probably 120, and then we'll probably sit there for a while. And then maybe a couple of weeks a little higher. I don't know. Actually, to be honest, he might get me a little higher than that. Sometimes at the start this time of the season, I'm always a little nervous because he could just like throw like 140 at you, and you're like, oof, like, okay. But it's actually like he does it in a pretty easy way. So he's not doing massive single runs. He breaks it up with nice doubles, and like I'm not doing crazy workout mileage either. Like I'm not going to do like 20K in a workout. It'll just be, I might do 8 times a K, and 3K warm up and a K walk cool down and then a double in the evening. And then all of a sudden you're at 20K for the day. And you're like, oh, sweet. That was pretty easy way to do 20, but yeah, he keeps saying, you're a man now, Sam, you can handle it. And I'm like, well, okay. Like, I'm not just a kid running 50Ks a week anymore. I'll probably end up running 150K a week, like, well, but that's what those best guys are doing. And I think that's what's going to be able to enable me to be competitive throughout all of next season. And so that's the key, I think.
Are you doing any track work and high intensity stuff during those big mileage weeks in your build up phase, or is it more just kind of 8 1Ks and thresholds and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, lots of hills, probably not so much on the track just yet. Like I think maybe some like tempo stuff on the track later on. Probably like into early New Zealand season stuff. Because we'll probably get ready to I'll probably pace like a 10K or maybe race a 5K or something. And so you got to be fit and kind of tuned, but you don't really want to tune too much. So maybe I'll jump on the track and do some like 12 400s or something, 65s or 63s, probably just in flats, but just short recovery stuff just to kind of keep the lungs hurting. But yeah, we do lots of hills, lots of just road sessions. And so we got a really cool, we've got 2 loops and CK's claimed both of them. Craig Kirkwood, we call him CK. And he's got CK's hilly loops of death, and it's friggin' the hardest hill loop ever. And you just do like a progressive, he just like says, all right, progressive run 3 laps of it's about 3 point something K around. And it, like if you're hammering it, it'll take you like I've got the Strava segment. I took it off Hayden the other day. I was pretty stoked. Actually took it off on the day he landed in the country too. So he woke up with the oh no his email. I was like, classic sucker. But anyway, I stole a Strava segment. And it's about 10 minutes, something like low 10 minutes to do the loop, and the average is like 3-minute Ks. So whatever that ends up being, the distances.
The loop's coming back down too, right? Like you're going up and then you're kind of looping.
Yeah.
So it's like a circle.
It's a full loop. So you go, there's 3 hills that are about 2 to 3 minutes long each. Pretty decent gradient. But then there's like a bit of a flat on the top. So it's like getting up the hill and then getting back on 3-minute Ks and then boosting the downhill to like get your average back down a little bit. And so, but also not trying to kill your knees at the same time, So it's like, it's about being sensible, but also like trying to get your Strava times down.
And is the hill part like fast, or is it just kind of a steep hill that you're just grinding up?
Oh, it's still pretty fast. Like it's fast enough that you can run like 315s up it.
Oh,
but you'll be like in the box running like 315s.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, like it's. I can't tell you gradients because I suck at them, but it takes about 3 minutes, and the hill's probably like 400, 500 meters long.
Yeah.
So it's you can go up it pretty hard, but it's not like super steep. The end one is probably only like 150 meters, maybe 200 meters long, and it's super steep. But that's a little shorter. But man, that gets you.
Yeah. Hey, just quickly, like a little bit back to college, but also on the training. Like the main differences between, the way you train at college and the way you train at home with CK. Is it vastly different, or do you reckon it's like it's just pretty similar with just minor differences?
Oh, this is always a hard one because I think there's such difference in like training environment, right? Like when I'm home, like I really enjoy grinding solo some days, because it makes you just feel so tough, and I think it actually builds like character and builds your like mental toughness when it comes to racing and the ability to push on the front. And so in terms of like training, I think it feels vastly different, but I don't know if it actually was, because I think at UW, you always had guys around you to make the workouts feel easy, and so the workouts, you'd crack some crazy times in workouts on the track or whatever. And I'm like, oh man, that was nuts. Like, how did I do that? But I think it was just because I had teammates around me that just drag you through. Whereas I don't feel that at home, but I think that's also because Craig just gives me like no rest ever. And so Andy was a little more generous with the rest. And I think, being in a team where you're probably one of the best guys, like you recover quicker than everyone else, but you still have to wait until the last guy is ready to go. And so I feel like Andy's style was probably more higher intensity with longer rest, and Craig's probably like similar volume still, but Craig would go less intensity with less rest. Sometimes he'll just go high intensity and low rest, and you're just like, oh man, you're a dick. But
we're talking like 30 seconds. 30 seconds, quarter 40, or 45 seconds or a minute or whatever. Not really anything. No 2 minute or 3 minute rests.
Yeah, like I had 8 times 2 minutes yesterday as like a getting back into it kind of workout. This is only my second workout back. 8 times 2 minute with 60 seconds rest. But it was more like 60 seconds jog. Like it wasn't just like 60 seconds stop and walk.
Yeah.
But yeah, like sometimes he does fartleks and it'll be like 250s on and 310s off. I'm like, Craig, 310s off is not off. That's like still on. So it's just like, you just end up running like 8K in like however 23 minutes or something. You're just like 24 minutes. You're like stuffed.
Oh man, that's heck.
Yeah.
Hey, so if you had like a 18-year-old come along and ask you, someone that really loved their coach like you do with CK, and everything's going well for them. They love their coach. They're winning races. They're getting stronger and fitter every month. And then they get offered, college scholarships and stuff. Like, how do you advise these kids? What would you personally say to them?
For me, it's pretty easy. I think I wouldn't have a Puma contract if I didn't go to the US. And so for me, that was one of the biggest pulls to the US. Like I loved training with CK, and I would have stayed if I could, but I think I saw, and I think it's getting better now in terms of like shoe companies like kind of seeing kids from Australia and New Zealand, mostly Australia, and actually giving them decent contracts now without going to the US. But when I went over, like nobody had got a contract. Like I think I probably could have got like $5,000 or something from a shoe company, but I'm like, that doesn't even pay for flights to Europe. So you're like, that's not an option at this point. And so I had to I went over to develop a profile and to build my personal brand a little better. And that's exactly what it did. And so, racing NCAAs, getting recognition and letting those big dogs and agents and stuff see you. Also getting race experience was just like, you just can't get that in New Zealand. And so my advice would be definitely plan to look at some colleges, but only go if you can like definitely see yourself improving there and getting valuable experience. Because if you're not going to get valuable experience, or you're just going to get broken, because a lot of kids go over and then get trained way too hard or get used as a hack, and then all of a sudden they're broken and their whole career is stuffed, whereas they could have stayed home and progressed better at home. Like perfect example was me versus Abby Caldwell, right? She didn't go to the US. I did. We both have kind of gone up through the ranks almost exactly the same. We both went to World Juniors. Sorry, that's the pressure cooker. Cooking some pork ribs for dinner. Yes. But anyway, Abby, we both did World Juniors. We both did World Secondary School cross country. She came fourth or something, and I came second. And so it would have just been like boom, 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 boom. And now we're both sponsored by Puma, but 2 different avenues. We got there 2 different ways, but the end result's kind of the same. So I think, my best advice would just be like, be sensible and don't do anything that makes you feel like unvalued. Because I think if your college coach doesn't value you, you're gonna probably not come out as good as you could. Whereas if your high school coach, you've got something good going there, then potentially look at staying.
Gotcha. I think the next one that I was curious about, I think you've already answered it, but like when guys like you kind of, leave college, you see articles and things online, it's like blah, blah, leaves college to turn pro. And like, I kind of always look at that and think, what the hell does that mean? Like, does that mean that all these people are earning, heaps of cash and they never have to work? Well, not never, but they don't have to work for years and years and years. I presume it depends who they are. For guys like you don't have a job, right? Like your job is running and you don't have to supplement with other things. Is that accurate?
Yeah. If I got paid any less, I'd have to get a job. But
gotcha. Yeah.
Like I'm probably teacher's wage, like not great at the moment. But I also signed when I was quite young, so I think there's the good thing is I've got a lot more room to improve. I think Puma are pretty happy with how I'm going at the moment for what they're getting for their money. But I think for me it's like if you're American or not. So if you're American and you go pro because you've had a mean year, you're gonna be making bank. But there's also like a lot of the contracts have clauses where you can have like reductions. So if you don't make the team, you get reduced, and it may not go back up, or it may go back up after a X amount of period. Whereas for me, like I got reductions in my contract, but I don't see myself, I don't see Puma having to apply them because I'm pretty much guaranteed to make an Olympic team as long as I'm get this standard or get good enough points and stuff to get selected or get an invite. Then New Zealand should send me, and so there's no need for that to stress me out. So I guess that's kind of a factor to consider. But if you're American, you get paid heaps. If you're not, you don't. Maybe if you're European, some countries in Europe probably have decent contracts. I don't know. Like it's kind of a topic that's not really talked about as much as probably I'd like it to be. But at the same time, I'm like, I kind of like that it's not too talked about because then you can, if you do win an Olympic medal or something, you can be a baller and nobody knows. Which is like kind of the dream, right? Like you're like subtly flexing. You're like, I got a flash watch, but yeah.
I feel like you're probably giving them a good bang for their buck, like with your personality and the way that you kind of love your country and you celebrate and you're not a kind of a shy athlete that is never gets shot with a camera. Do you know what I mean? Like, feel like
Yeah, no, it was kind of cool actually. I got a bit of camera time at World Champs after the heat. Like the camera followed me for a little bit. I was like, oh yeah, I like here we go, a bit of personality, a little poo cutter in there. And I was like,
that's what I mean. Like there's those things that like some of those photos went pretty viral. Like they've seen by a lot of people, and it can't be a bad thing.
No, I think like I get along with the Puma team really well. I really love their product, love their shoes and everything, and so I'm just pretty stoked to be a part of that team. And I think it's like reciprocal, which is the cool thing. Like I feel quite valued. Like I go into the Puma house and stuff at World Champs, and people come up to me and say hi and introduce themselves, and so it's a cool little family that we got going. And like regardless of the money, like it's a brand that I'm pretty stoked to be a part of. And I see that they will look after their athletes really, really well. So it's pretty special.
I wanted to finish up just with a quick question about kind of the mental side of things. In an interview last year, you stated that, you may not be favoured in some of these major races. You're referring to World Championships at the time. But I went into thinking I can win this race if I play my cards right. And I just where does that belief, because, I think the biggest thing holding back the people who make it and the people who really don't make it is that belief that you can step up with a bunch of these massive big dogs who are just so damn good, like you faced in the semi-final, and you actually, I think the average human standing there on the start line thinking, shit, I'm going to get my ass kicked, whereas you're standing there thinking, I can win this if I play my cards right. Where does that come from, man? Is that something that you were born with, or is it just come from the hard training, or is it something you work on hard, to get yourself thinking positively like that?
I think it's like nature and nurture kind of thing, like I think personality comes into it for me. But what surprises me all the time is you can have people who are quiet who have that same mentality. Like I often associate loud personalities with confident personalities, but that's not actually always true. And so for me it is, but you can be a loud person and be real timid and be like, oh, actually I don't know if I can do that. But yeah, so for me, my family have always been super encouraging. So it's like family input that have kind of, and almost like, oh, this is such a Tanner thing, eh? Like the Bay of Plenty kind of know the Tanners, like as like pretty hardcore, like extreme family who are like kind of low key good at everything. And so I'm like, oh, sorry, rest of Bay of Plenty. But like we, you know, they're like, oh, that's the Tanners, they're just good at everything. And so that kind of mindset has just like been like almost instilled in me, like, oh, you're a Tanner, you're good at this. You know, you're a Tanner, you can work hard. You know, you do this, like I can grind, I can achieve good things and great things or whatever. So there's kind of that. And like my mum and dad have always been like, yeah, you can, you know, what's stopping you from doing that? So that's built into it. I also think that it's because like I'm not really scared of running. Like it's kind of in my head, it's kind of a silly thing to be scared of because I've done like such extreme sports that I'm like, that's way scarier than trying to face, you know, Jakob in a race. I'm like, it's like there's all, what are you actually scared of? And so it's almost like a guy logic that goes through my head. It's like, oh yeah, hold on, what's the worst case scenario? Like, oh, I blow up. Yeah, well, yeah, okay, that's gonna hurt, but it's just pain, you know. Like you can just keep pushing, and all you can do is like, why would you let your brain get in the way of your physical capabilities? And so like I told someone on another podcast, like I dropped in like a 14-foot vert ramp. I'm like, that shit's scary. You're like, you're standing on top of the vert, I mean, you fall on your face. I'm like, you can break your neck and die. Like you know, you fall on your arm, you dislocate your shoulder or something worse, you know. But standing in the start line with a bunch of those guys is like, it's just exciting. Like I'm like, oh, here we go. Like open the door to the pain cave. Let's go. Let's just jump on the train and hurt. And so I guess that's like part of it. You stand there going, yeah, like these guys are gonna be hard to beat, and you know it, but you're like, I can hurt almost. Like everybody believes that they've trained themselves to hurt more than the next guy, and so it's just like, who can hurt the most, boys? Like. And I think Jakob's incredibly good at that. He's just like off the front, he's like, I can hurt better than you guys can. I'm like, look, man, you can. Suckers. We're all soft. But yeah, I don't know.
Oh, classic. I really, really enjoyed that podcast, mate. Thanks for coming on. And I just I hope to see you there, you know, in that Olympic final next year.
Yeah, thanks, mate. This should be good fun, eh?
Yeah, awesome. Awesome, man. Take care. Thanks again. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, beauty. Thanks, mate. See you later.